All right.
Welcome to the Black Script Storytellers. My name is Kevin Marable, and today we have a writer, producer, filmmaker of two award winning independent films and hails from the DMV, Northern Virginia to be exact. Her production, Cine 30 Media, is her production company. Vanetta Cornish is here with us. Vanetta, how you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good, Kevin. Thanks for having me this evening.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining. It is a pleasure to have you on. Finally, right? Finally.
Yes, finally. Yes, we met just last fall at the Prince George's Film Festival, and it was such a treat. And obviously, we're both moving really fast, so I'm glad we've had this
Right.
opportunity to connect.
Right,
And
absolutely, absolutely, and that was actually my first film festival that I had ever attended, in
really,
person. Yes, I wanted to once I found out about it, I wanted to get a
yes,
feel, to see how it is, especially in our area,
yes,
um, and also begin to learn what it is that is missing in this business. So
yes,
I took it as a learning experience. I didn't submit anything. I didn't have any writing or film submissions or anything like that. I purely went for the experience and to network and to meet people and to learn, as you know, to see what people's issues are and where the voids are
yes,
within this
yes,
business. In,
yes.
in particular to people of color as well, because I feel like out of everybody in this industry, we are probably the last to have all of the knowledge that it takes to get into this business and be successful.
Yes, I'll say in terms of, I think people who look like us, people of color, we have to, first of all, as you mentioned, you went to the festival for the first time purely to network, in part, and to learn. And that is key. This is a hustle business, right?
It
This
is.
is the film industry is not an industry where you apply on LinkedIn and you're called in 2 weeks, and you go through, let's say, a traditional hiring process. It
Right,
does not work that way.
right.
This is a people industry. You have to get out there. You have to meet people. Now that said, you have to learn the craft, right? That's the
Absolutely.
foundation. Learn
Mhm,
the craft. So whether you're going through traditional film school program as an undergrad, my concentration was film, and
mhm.
so uh, there is no substitute for learning the craft, right? That's
Right,
that's your foundation.
right.
Now, you learn your craft, but again, you still have to work your way through. Whether, if you're in school, there's internships,
Mhm.
there's going to events, sort of just like you said. And again, what makes this industry really different is that it's more of a hustle industry. You have to be creating something and making something.
Yeah,
People don't just um, give you a job sight unseen, right? The first thing people want to know is, well, what have you done, right? Because
right.
you have to be able to show what you're working on.
Mhm.
Now, in some cases, that might seem like a catch 22. Someone could be brand new to the industry or fresh out of school. Let's say, they want to be a PA, and production's thinking, well, where have you ever PA'd? And maybe they haven't. But that's where you have to, that's where you may get your first opportunity, right?
Right.
Uh, and everything just grows from it. It's so organic. And just as you saw from the festival, you were exposed to so much more than you probably anticipated.
Yeah.
And it just morphs.
Yeah.
One connection leads to another. One bit of work on a project leads to something else. And that's really how it goes. And so I would say, and so, wow, I could say a lot. We're talking about filmmaking, right? I could literally talk all day, right?
Right. And we're gonna get into it. We're gonna get into it.
Yes,
But
yes.
just to add to your points, it really was a lot to take in, and it was an eye opener,
Yes.
for sure. And the eye opener for me was, wow. However, I did not know as much information. It was a shocker that so many people who in this area that are
Hmm.
involved in film and have gone to school for this still don't have a complete grasp as to what it takes to get into the business. They might make a few strides here and there, but then
Sure.
they get stuck. And then once they get
Sure.
stuck, it's like they hit a wall and don't know how to move forward. And
Sure.
so a lot of times, especially during the panels when it was the Q&A part of the session and people were able to ask questions, uh,
Hmm.
I was just surprised by the the different levels of the questions. And some
Yes.
people who are experienced and still don't know things that they should know at their stage in filmmaking. And so I decided that I was going to figure out a way to where I can
Right.
actually pull all of that information together. However, and my way by doing it is by, talking to people and being able to get some of that information, and not necessarily gatekeep and share it with our community and with the world, so to speak, um,
Sure.
in an effort to hopefully um, give more clarity as to what it is that maybe some folks might be missing.
Right. And that's fantastic. And, it goes back to also the thing about working in the film industry and filmmaking, there is no clear, direct path, right?
Right.
So you may start, life may take you in a different direction. You may have to pause, you come back to it. So, really, consistency to the fullest extent possible is key. And again, there's a lot of subjectivity in this industry, right? Let's just be
Right.
frank. So and there's on different levels because one, again, knowing your craft, learning your craft, getting opportunity, you're going to get opportunities to learn. As a producer, when I see that someone wants it and is dedicated to it, committed to it, and hungry for it, and is willing to try
Yeah.
and invest in themselves and just take a step, that to me is like this person cares about it. Because again, no one's going to bring it to you. This industry does not work that way.
Right.
You have to get out there, figure out a way to do it. Sometimes it means, how are you going to position your life so that you can do that? Because again, it's not necessarily 9 to 5. And oftentimes, as you see with many in the industry who are established, let's say in Hollywood today, they started on their own, right? And
Right.
then others who may be further along take notice. And that's often a way that it could happen.
Hmm.
Because again, and you've heard many of the legendary like Spike Lee and individuals say, you just have to start, right? You just have to start.
Yeah.
And clearly, good work is gonna rise to the top. People are gonna notice. People are
Absolutely.
gonna notice. And the beautiful thing about it is that we're all individuals. When you recognize that you have a talent for this, and when you figure out what your niche is, you just go for it, and it naturally comes through. And for me as a producer, I absolutely love seeing people shine. Like it gets me excited. So
Right.
when I'm making a movie, it is so much bigger than me because what I see when it comes to casting and the people involved, I have a chance to help that individual elevate, right? Bring forth to the world what they're doing and so that they can shine. And that to me is one of the greatest joys in this. And so, yes, so again, there are many layers to it. And I would say, in addition to the craft, there's the professionalism, right?
Right.
You-
Definitely. Definitely a certain level of professionalism. I feel like that is also a thing that you must learn. You can't just, walk up to people and, I know there's a certain thing that we have in our community called code switching. Sometimes you have to turn off the regular you and turn on the professional you, and
right,
be able
right,
to, say
and,
what it is that you need to say, in a professional manner,
right,
in order to get your point across and in order to, potentially make it through that, whether it's a crack in the doors
sure,
wide open, or, whatever that opportunity is that's right in front of you.
right,
There is a certain skill set to professionalism, and
right,
uh,
right. And,
we've
and, and I,
learned
yes,
that.
and I would say, and it's not as hard as it may seem, right?
No,
It's
not at
because
all.
sometimes, let's be honest, sometimes you either have it or you don't. And what you don't have, you can learn in some cases. Because I do believe, yes, in some cases, there's pure talent. Like, I'm
Right.
not going to go out and try to record an album, right? I can hum a little bit, I can carry a tune,
Right.
but I'm never going to be Alicia Keys, Mariah Carey. I'm not going to try because I recognize that's not my gift.
Mhm. Right.
And so I'm going to play to my strengths with which is, writing, and I would have to say probably producing by default, right? Because
Right.
I came to this knowing, I want to be a filmmaker, but I didn't necessarily grow up saying I can't wait to be a film producer.
Right. And so we're gonna talk about that.
Okay. Okay.
We're gonna talk about that, and everything that we've talked about, leading up to now was really just general conversation. It wasn't
Okay.
a part of my questions
Right.
at all, but I was enjoying our engagement. But I do have a set amount of
Okay.
questions that
Sure.
I do want to ask that are
Okay.
important,
Sure.
and it hopefully it helps tell your
Yes.
story as to who you
Yes.
are and how you got into this business.
Right. Because I told
Um,
you, because I could be here all day talking about this, and tomorrow, and the next
Right,
day. So
right, right. And so there's a question that I like to start off with in
sure.
every episode. It's a very simple question, but some might find it difficult to answer. Are
Okay.
you ready? That question is, who is Vanetta Cornish?
Vanetta Cornish is a passionate writer, making strides in the film industry, uh, just being the vessel to bring forth my gifts so that others can shine. And
Hmm.
as it relates to filmmaking, again, my goal, how I approach filmmaking, or what comes through naturally for me in my role in this process, is being a visionary and using that to bring people together through cinema. That is the core of it, of me as a filmmaker. As an individual, I would say I'm a people person. I love people. I like to uh, I'm human, right? I'm all these things, and all these things come together and come through in me as a filmmaker. So hopefully I didn't go too far around that, but bottom
Right,
line, I should say is I'm complex just like everybody else. I'm
right,
not just one thing. I'm not just African American female.
right.
I'm all these things, and the sum total of me is what allows me to bring forth my gift so that others can shine and be elevated.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's part of the reason why I asked that question is to before we get into what it is that you do professionally, I like to share with the world who you are as a person and get them to understand who you are first and foremost, and then
Mm,
why you got into this business and what it is that drives you
sure.
in this business. Because just like with everybody watching, whoever's watching at any point in time, there's somebody else out there that's just like you, and
Yes.
they want to know how you got your start and how you managed to navigate to get to where you are today. So I like to be able to share that part of the journey and share that part of the story because I feel like that's important
Sure.
to begin there and then move into what it is that you do.
Sure.
Um, Now, you are a writer and a producer, but you weren't always in filmmaking. You were a corporate communications. You were in corporate communications for a while. Talk a little
Yes.
bit about how you found your way back into filmmaking.
Yes. Interesting. So when I started my career in corporate communications, I knew I would get back to filmmaking.
Okay.
So essentially, and I can take it further back. I always knew that I would be a writer. And see, for me, I feel like I was fortunate in that I knew very early on where my interests what my interests were. For me, it was just a matter of figuring out where I was going to channel it.
Right.
And so when I saw Do the Right Thing, and we don't even have to explain because I think we all know, I knew at that moment I wanted to write for film.
Mm,
And what got me there was it was the emotion that the movie evoked in me, just the layers. It was the storytelling, the memorable characters. I think one of my biggest goals as a writer producer, when I want to write characters so memorable the way that Spike Lee does.
yes.
And so all the elements of that movie just moved me, and I knew that I wanted to be able to write in a way that brought people together that way, and and moved people.
Right. And so what did you do to begin to work on that craft and then eventually perfect that craft to the point to where you were able to complete a screenplay, whether it's for the first time or now, however many screenplays you have under your belt?
Sure. So, as I mentioned, my undergraduate path, I studied communications. I was a communications major. I
Mhm.
had various interests also, loving English. So, I ended up minoring in English also. I'd
Okay.
studied Spanish. So, I minored in Spanish also. So, I was trying to figure out how to do everything that I really enjoyed.
Right.
And ultimately, I chose the path of really focusing more on the communications in terms of filmmaking, but all those elements have come together. You'll see this throughout my work.
Hmm.
Essentially, so when I finished undergraduate school, I should say this is interesting, just interesting. I was on the set of Homicide, which filmed in Baltimore, as
Yeah.
an extra the very same day that the OJ verdict came out, the very moment that the
Wow.
OJ verdict came out. So yes, I'm dating myself a little bit, but that's okay.
That's all right.
And and but I say that to also speak to my path. So even in undergraduate school, I was studying film. I was the type of person when I went to Towson in Baltimore, Towson, Maryland.
Hmm.
If I saw what looked like a production taking place, oh, I was over there. Like I would go drive up, walk up as close as I could to see what was going on. And
Right.
if there was a way to get closer to it, that's exactly what I was going to do. And so, uh, being an extra on Homicide, that was a way to, again, just starting to explore the industry. And so, again, at that time, I had no idea that, yeah, I'm going to be a film producer. For me, it was just following this path of making movies. And so I remember once on an undergraduate project, I went out. Uh, I grabbed one of my sorors. I'm a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sport Incorporated, and she went downtown with me, and I was filming. I was working on a PSA at that time, and she went downtown with me, and I had the camera. Something about being behind that camera really empowers you. And there was a street fight that took that was happening. I literally parked the car, jumped out of my car with the camera, and rolled up on this street fight, filming it. And she's like, "You're crazy. I'm never going out with you again."
Yeah.
but
Especially in Baltimore.
it's but you know what? I wasn't afraid, and so I was working on this PSA about working hard and playing hard. And so my goal was capturing imagery of people working hard and, playing hard and not working so hard. So,
Right.
and the fight broke out. And this fight's breaking out. I'm filming it. There
Mhm.
was no harm to me. But, I got out of there quick, but it, I just felt this sense of, I don't know, weird safety. But to that, I should say, yes, you want to use common sense when you're filming, but there's also this no fear factor, right? When you're doing something that you're driven by, and my intentions were good, I wasn't purposely exploiting anyone because I was sort of asking, like, can I, and just maneuvering my way.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and that goes back to my initial point about, finding a way. And so those were early days, undergraduate school days. And so for me, I just kept building all along. I mean, I'd done an internship with a production company. I was in Baltimore at one point. Um, and I actually considered, immediately after undergrad, I considered, do I go for NYU? I really wasn't sure at that time. I
Right.
did not know anyone who lived in New York, who lived in LA. No one in my family was in this industry, so I was really navigating sort of on my own.
Right.
Um, and I decided, you know, not being an only child. Now I thought it would be selfish if I took off and went to New York or LA and expected my parents to take care of me,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
Now, had I thought differently, maybe they would have. But I, so in my mindset, I was like, I can't do that because that would just be selfish.
Hmm.
And so I said, okay, I'm going to go for my master's. I received my master's in journalism, public affairs, and that started my corporate communications track.
Right.
And I'll tell you, there was a day when I actually had an interview with a producer who was in New York. She was offering me a job. I also had an interview for a regular 9 to 5 job in the Maryland area.
Mhm.
And I did not take the New York job because I knew that working as a PA, I'd still be out here scrabbling. I didn't know what would come next. And again, as I mentioned, not being an only child, I thought it might be selfish to expect my parents to just take care of me. So I did what I thought was the responsible thing.
Mhm.
And can I tell you, when I made that decision, I cried.
I
I
can imagine.
cried.
'Cause at a certain point, a certain aspect of you is feeling like you're letting go of a certain piece of your dream. You feel like your dream is there and you're still here, and that, you're still trying to figure out, how am I going to get from point A to point B? And am I making the right decision? Have I taken the
The
job
PA
in New
job.
York? Right. And
Right.
who knows what kind of connections I would have made once I'm in New York.
That's
Um,
right.
and
You
maybe that
never
was
know.
the fast track. You just don't
Right.
know.
You never know. And your journey is your journey. And
Mhm.
that said, it is interesting because even when I was doing the internship around that time, uh, the company I was interning with, and I was speaking with the owner, and she said one thing that stuck with me, and she said, "The film industry is going to be here."
It is. Yeah.
And I took comfort of that. And it's interesting. I said to myself, I'm going to be back. And
Yeah.
so I never really let it go because I was always writing. And that said, my time in corporate communications too, it all comes together because see there I've always worked in areas where I was sort of focused on the bottom line
Mm,
within a particular company or industry,
mhm.
being able to package material information, meeting deadlines, the organizational skills that are required, right?
Right.
Professionalism. So all those things, when I started
It
Center 30
helped.
Media,
It helped.
we're right there because again I had that business side sort of going. Now I'm not going to say I know everything in the film industry because I don't think anybody does. This is an evolving industry, and at the time I was coming through, like I said, from undergrad and into graduate school. Technology obviously has changed so much, and we were on the more on the cusp of where we are now even at that time. I recall one of my grad school professors saying that newspapers were going to go away. So, some people agreed. Some people like, there's no way. No one's ever going to get rid of the Washington Post print edition,
Right.
right?
And here
So,
we are.
and, and I always knew too, I could write from anywhere.
Yes.
Um, so again, I was on the verge of these technological changes as well, right? And
Mm,
so now I will admit, I had a hard time at first when digital became more the way of filmmaking versus uh, film stock
right.
because I learned shooting on film stock, right? When we had the edit bays where you literally had to run the film through the edit bay and cut and splice, and that was not easy. So
Oh,
I was so in love with the look of film. But
mm,
again, you have to adapt, right? And at the core of that, the craft didn't necessarily change. It's just a tool we're using, right?
right.
And so you always have to remember that.
Yeah. I feel like, I mean, and you said so much within that piece,
Yes.
that it is hard to circle back to everything, but I feel like, on your last point, we do have to adapt to technology and the ever changing
Yes.
road of technology. And I know, when we were transitioning from traditional media to now digital media, a lot of people were up in arms, and there was a lot of pushback during that time, and a lot of unknowingness as to where this might go.
Sure.
And of course, even then, there were a lot of visionaries then that saw, the path that we're on today,
Yes.
early on, and there was a lot of naysayers and saying, that this would never happen. And now we are currently approaching the new path of AI, and of
Yes.
course also with social media, and how everything is interconnected, and
Mm-hmm.
how fast information travels.
Sure.
And also now, outside of movie theaters, streaming platforms, you have
Absolutely.
so many different avenues and so many different technological advances because of how fast we've moved in technology, that you now have to figure out, okay, well, how do I adapt to all of these changes? And it's not
Right.
just one change that, what we experienced then. Now it's five, six, seven changes at once.
Right.
And they're
Right.
all coming to you so fast on a day to
Yes.
day, day to day, week to week, month to month
Right.
pace.
Right.
that you have to
Yes.
adapt. Mhm.
Yes. And I think, what you're doing, what I've been doing, and what many people are doing is start playing with it, right? Figure it
Right.
out. If you're new to social media, figure out, okay, this is, okay, how can I use it to tell my story, right? how,
Absolutely.
how can I use it to do what I do? If I'm an actor and I see reels all the time, I see actors putting things out, um, use it to your advantage,
Right.
right?
Right.
Um, make use everything to your advantage. And that's something I say to myself. It's not to take advantage of things, but find a way to use it to your advantage where you can. The reality is every single tool may not work for you, but explore these things, find out in how others are using them and engaging with them, because you also want to find us, well, if you're producing side and other sides, where your audience is, right? What people are using. And that's why we have this proliferation of streaming. The technology has enabled it, and the people are going there. So that's why obviously so many companies, you have to spring up a streaming site, right?
Right.
Because that's where your customers are.
Yes. Absolutely.
And you have to innovate. You have to get there with them.
Yes. You have to
And it
think
does.
out, you have to
Yes.
think outside of the box.
Yes.
And you have to, you know, so to your point, you have to be creative, and begin to adapt and play with all of these tools and use them as tools. Don't use them to, to kind of cheat the system, but
Absolutely.
use them as a tool to that potentially could help you advance, or
Yes.
could also potentially, help you gain more attention faster by
Yes.
utilizing this tool that a lot of other people are afraid to use, or
Right.
are kind of shaming it right now because,
Sure.
of what it could lead to. Uh,
Right.
but at some point in time, it's going to be inevitable that this is going
Yes.
to be in place somehow,
Yes.
some way, in shape or form.
Yes.
Even once they put legislation in place, and there's certain things that you can and can't do,
Sure.
at that point in time, it's already going to be baked in. It's already going to be locked in.
That's right.
You want to be
That's
ahead
right.
of the curve,
That's right.
and yeah, you want to be ahead of the curve, and know how to use these tools before that happens, so that
Right.
you're not left behind, or you're still not scratching your head thinking like, okay, now that this is okay
Mhm.
for everybody, what do I
Right.
do? Because
Right.
then it'll be too late.
Right. And the reality too is, and I'll say add to that. Now, using all these tools, adapting to new ways, it doesn't mean you have to lower your standard, right?
Right. Right.
You can use that tool effectively for what your company is, what your brand is, a type of material you're creating. Whether it's music, film, otherwise, if you're modeling or acting, and so um, and so that's what I wanted to add to that point. And
Mhm.
so before I lose my train of thought, because again, I can talk all day.
Yeah, no
um,
worries, no
yes,
worries. Now, okay, now back to the questions.
yes,
uh, your first film, Bachelor's Degree, it came out
bachelorette degree. Yes,
independently in 2013 under your
yes,
production company, Cine 30 Media,
yes,
and you were the producer of that film. Um, and then in 2015, you ended up receiving 8 nominations and won 3 awards, to include the World Music and Independent Film Festival Award for Best Screenplay.
yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that experience?
Yes. So I'll say for me, my foray into filmmaking is the fact that I'm a writer. I recognized that very early on. And even when I, made that choice to not take that PA job in LA, I mean, New York at that time, I even knew then, I was like, where's my strength, right? Even through where's my strength? My strength is in the writing. And so I've always continued to write. I've been a writer. And so, I recognized early on that that was my strength. And so as I think about bachelorette's degree, yes, while I was still working in a corporate space, I would spend time writing. And it's one of those things where writing, writing is like a natural high to me. I'm all about that. It just takes me there, and it's something that I can do pretty much at any
Anytime.
moment. It's like breathing to me. Now,
Right.
this is not to say the writing process is necessarily easy all the time,
Mhm.
but it's just what I do, right?
Right.
Uh,
It comes to
some
you
people,
naturally.
it comes to me naturally, and so having written bachelorette's degree, when I finished that movie, my first thought was, I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to enter my script into a script writing contest, right? And see what happens. My first thought was, I'm going to contact Spike Lee. Yep, because I'm not afraid. That's how far I'm going. And
Right.
so, uh, you know, and then I entered a script writing contest and I didn't hear anything back. And I happened to have gone to the American Black Film Festival for the first time in 2011, because I would say after I'd spent some time in corporate and I had really gotten to the point where I'm like, I have to get back to filmmaking. It was eating at me to that extent. It's like, I have to get back to filmmaking. And I recall even along the way, I said to one of my friends, what, I should take a directing class. I should take an acting class. And all these things I'm thinking and feeling, it's all moving me back to filmmaking.
Right.
And there were things that would just come to me, sort of subconsciously.
Hmm.
And at the moment, I didn't recognize really what it was, but it really was leading me back. And I would also sometimes say in that corporate environment, because I worked for a Fortune 50 company, and I would jokingly say to one coworker, I'm only here until Hollywood calls. When Hollywood calls, I'm gone. um,
Right.
you know, and so, and I was still in touch with some amazing people who work there, but all those things were, and then the reality is, you know what? Hollywood's not going to call me directly. I've got to take the steps to get. But
Yeah.
again, we have these seeds that we plant in our mind, and things just start happening within you. Your gift is coming to fruition, right? And that's really what this all is. And so to take a step back, so as I mentioned, going to the American Black Film Festival for the first time in 2011, and actually that is the year I did see Spike Lee there. And what I loved about ABFF,
Yeah.
so I'm in the room with, people we see on TV that we admire. But I felt like I'm just here with my peers. I'm home with my peers.
Right.
And I had that feeling. It wasn't stargazing per se. It was just a recognition, I'm right here where I belong. And
Yeah.
so when I got back home from that trip, I tell you, when I walked through my front door, I had this sense of peace that passes all understanding. And if you've ever felt that, then you know what I'm talking about.
Hmm.
Probably within a few weeks later, it hit me. I was like, okay, I know I'm about to start my media company.
Wow.
And I know, and I knew I'm taking a bachelor's degree in production in May. I'm going to start next May.
Okay.
And when I made everything lined up to allow me to do that, and so with bachelor's degree, I was literally establishing Center 30 Media and starting pre-production at the first time, at the same time. So this was all coming together,
Mm.
because I will say I even knew all along that even though I'm working in this corporate space, I'm going to do something outside of here as well.
Right.
And for years, again, it didn't really click. I'm like, no, is it a PR firm? No, that's not it.
Hmm.
Um, and so when it did finally, I was like, aha,
Yeah.
that's what makes sense. This is the business I'm to be starting. And so again, all these things just started coming together, and I started positioning my life in a way that would allow me to do that, whether, um, just recognizing opportunities that came my way. So for example, I then decided to leave the Fortune 50 company so that I would have more personal time
Right.
to start focusing on film. And so I literally just took less demanding roles so that I could create this space in my life. And so I think, again, for everyone, that journey is going to be different.
Hmm.
You have to recognize, um, play the cards in your hand, right?
You
You
do.
have to recognize certain things.
Hmm.
And bachelorette's degree. We filmed in the DMV area. The film, it was so exciting. I mean, having a premiere with over 275 people when you first saw it was
Yeah.
just super exciting. And uh, right after bachelorette's degree was done, I had ideas about the next story. Um, and so just taking the time to get that together. One year, lost my grandfather in 2016, so that kind of slowed me down from the writing a little bit. And that's the part I would say with filmmaking, it's a long term game. And, so much in life changes over the course of, again, from story idea to when you actually go to production.
Right.
There's a lot that happens, and you really have to live with it and love what you're doing for that duration.
Right. You have to see it through, and you can't waver on it. If this is what you
Yes,
decided, you have to stick with it and see it all the way through, no matter what hurdles might be in your way,
yes,
what setbacks,
that's right. That's right.
finances, all of those things.
That's right. That's right. So,
And
yep.
yeah,
So
so
yeah,
you definitely have to stay the course.
that's right. And I would say that what made me a producer with bachelor's degree is that when I recognized, like I said, I didn't hear back from the screenwriting contest. I'm like, okay. I said to myself, I can do this, right?
Right. Right.
And that was the moment I became a producer. I'm like, I can do this because what I immediately remembered was being an undergraduate student, working on film productions, and just, I guess, somewhere having this bold confidence that I can do this. I wrote it. I can do it. I can pull all this together.
Right.
and,
Or
and
even if you don't have that level of confidence of saying I can do this, at least have enough confidence to say, you know what, I'm going to figure this out.
yes,
Hmm.
yes, yes. And so that was the beginning. And I will say, I didn't know anyone very well in the film industry in the DMV, right? Because I'd been working in corporate, I'd been focused in that space. And so, but what I'll tell you, the beautiful thing about filmmaking, as soon as I made up my mind to do it, I just immediately started meeting people. Things were coming together.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing how things just flowed. And so, even with the exit row, right? It just, I just continue to meet people.
Hmm.
It just comes together. And I will say, whenever I step out doing things related to film, uh, you're seeing my heart. This is me. This is my pure intention. And I think people recognize that you have to be authentic in
You do.
what you're doing.
Yeah.
No one is perfect, but people recognize. And when they see me work hard and be willing to do whatever it takes to get a production done, I think that means something to other people. And whenever I'm working with people, my whole goal is I want you to shine, right?
Yeah.
And so you'll often notice, and I'll say, when the movies are coming out, we're in production. I'm all about, I'm putting cast and crew in front. It's not me. I'm taking a back seat. I'll show up later, obviously. People, but I'm more focused on folks connecting with the cast and crew
Yeah.
because, yeah,
They're the ones in the forefront,
that's right. That's
and
right.
you want your project to be a winning project. And so the all of the people that you select and decide to be a part of your project, you want
Yes,
them to be the face and the
absolutely.
representation of
Right.
what your project embodies overall. And then
That's
once
right.
Yeah, and then once you see that it's successful and everybody, you have a winner, and everybody, the reception is great, then at that point, of course, the accolades are going to come, or
Right.
at least some sort of recognition will come and say, well, who created this? Who wrote this? Who produced this? And that's when you can say, I took a leap of faith, and
Right.
this was a project that I had, set out to do. I didn't really know all of the steps of
Sure.
how to do it at first, but I took the time and I figured it out, and this is what we came up with. And
Sure.
yeah,
Yep. And I will add to that too. If you're in this industry, you better love it regardless of the accolades, right?
right. You have to.
You better love it for yourself because not everyone's going to like what you're doing. You're not going to connect with everyone, but you do want to set out, you want to do the best you can, be the best you can. But
Hmm.
at the end of the day, if no one gives you an award, you have to accept that because it's not about,
You got to keep moving forward.
you got to keep moving forward.
Right.
And so yeah, so all those things tie into when you talk about how people break in, how you stay in, and where you go next.
Right.
Those sort of, I would say, personality traits and being able to accept the rejections, the changes. As a producer, you got to pivot
Yeah.
so quickly.
Yeah. You got to
I mean,
you got to be quick on your feet.
yes, and I always say, honestly, on a production, your production can fall apart any given day, any given moment,
Right.
and you just have to be able to pivot, um, focus on the things that matter, And I will say, when I started Center 30 Media, I experienced a shift in that my discernment kicked in so high, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like I thank God for that, because it was a level of, you consider a level of protection, right? Because as I'm out here, sometimes in the unknown, just just finding my way, I feel that presence, just being
A guide.
watched over.
That's a guide. Yeah,
And
a
yes,
guide, and they're giving you the path that you need to take.
yes,
They're putting the right people in front of you. And I get what you're saying. Basically, you're, along with you hoping that all of the steps that you're taking are guided. You're also hoping that you don't get lost in this process, and that you're actually on the right path. And how do I know this is the right person to work with, or I should choose these
that's
people?
right.
you
That's
know
right.
so
Yeah,
yes, you do have to have a certain level of discernment. You
that's
have to
right.
be strong in your faith and in
That's
your
right.
belief in yourself,
That's
and
right.
what it is that you set forth to do. um,
Right.
and you can't waver on it. You have to be strong.
That's right. That's
Mhm.
right. Yeah. And when you need those moments to disconnect, you disconnect, but you got, and I think, again, a lot of this, I want to say it's built in, right?
Mhm.
it,
Yeah.
it just, it comes with it. And it comes, I'll go back to, recognizing your gift, and just, being able to walk in it. Right. There's really no greater joy. And my hope for everyone is that, regardless of what you do, whatever your dream is, I truly hope that you can tap into that, because honestly, it would change your life. Change your life. No matter what's happening on a bad day, an uncertain day, you have this space, and you're in this space where you know that you're where you belong.
Right.
And we can, even though we continue to grow and evolve, there's a sense of peace that comes with that.
Hmm. There is, absolutely. And I want to backtrack just for a quick second. There was something
Sure.
you said earlier, where you mentioned that you were waiting for Hollywood to call you, and then you had a moment to where you realized, I can't wait for Hollywood to call me. Hollywood is
That's
not going to
right.
call me. I have to be the person to make this
That's
happen
right.
myself.
That's
Uh,
right.
I have to make myself available, and present myself to the world, so that way Hollywood knows who I am, even
That's right. Right.
get on
Right.
Hollywood's radar. And
That's
so
right.
how do you get on Hollywood's radar? Well, you have to start to put things in motion and start to meet people and connect,
Yes. Yes.
and put your plan in front of you, and follow it to a T.
That's
Um,
right. That's right. And then, I was going to say Hollywood. I'm using it as sort of a general term, but because the reality is, I'll be honest. If I never receive a star in Hollywood, I'm not going to stop being a filmmaker. If
right.
I
Yeah.
never work for a major studio, I'm not going to stop what I'm doing. So again, you have to recognize, what your what you're really in it for, right? Because there are alternatives to, you don't have to just, I would say to anyone, don't think that if you're not necessarily in Hollywood, that you're not
Good enough,
good
or
enough at
Mhm.
what you're doing, or, because everybody wants to be innocent. But, we know that dream has been built up over years.
Right.
But there are other ways, and we talked about, with streaming, and 50 Cent new studio in Louisiana, right? So you
Right.
have to think outside. Don't lock yourself into just this one path for
Mhm.
doing what you're called to do. There are
Absolutely.
different ways. And I think, um if and this is about the adaptation, right? You have to be able to, uh, yeah, recognize it, and be flexible in that, and recognize that, because again, not everybody who goes to a certain city to do a certain thing is gonna rise to the very top, right?
Right. I will say this, and the more I talk to people, and the more I dive deeper into this business and this industry, um,
Hmm.
both within Hollywood and
Hmm.
also on the independent level.
Sure.
One thing that is very in common, with both sides, and
Sure.
maybe people just aren't aware of it, is that a lot of times the reason why, a lot of people wonder, like, why am I not getting discovered? I'm doing
Hmm.
X, Y, and Z and I'm doing all of the things. I believe everything that I'm doing is right, and I'm following the advice that either my mentor or my manager or my agent is telling me, or whatever the
Sure.
case may be, and things just aren't sticking.
Sure.
What's happening, and the thing that I'm beginning to realize is that even if you're already in the business, everybody is chasing their own dream. So
Yes.
they're not always looking outward for the next.
Right.
They're focused on, what project do I have next that I want to see get off the ground, um,
Right.
and get that one greenlit, or make a deal over here or make a deal over there.
Right.
So at the end of the day, they really don't have the time to be looking for who's next, and so you kind of have to force your way, and like you
Right.
said earlier, hustle,
Sure.
to gain that attention that a lot of times they're not really going to pay attention to. A lot of times they're kind of on a track,
Right.
and they're going to
Right.
just stay on that track until you have to be that person that either derails it, or
Yes.
there's something
Yes.
that gets them to pump their brakes real quick and say, "Oh,
That's right.
let's
That's
do it."
right.
Yeah,
That's right. And again, it's all tied back to, I have to say, this is a privileged industry, right?
yeah,
Like, it's a privilege to be able to do this because, again, as I go back to, it's not traditional, let's say 9 to 5 per se. It really requires, the level of creativity involved, the artistry is so dynamic.
mhm.
Um, and I'm not saying this to make sort of excuses for anything. There are no guarantees.
No, no,
There are lots of uncertainties. I can say, even as a producer, the time it takes to bring a project to fruition, it's
right,
not an overnight thing, especially if I'm writing original screenplay, right? I've
right,
got to have that phase where I can focus on developing that story before I can even begin to focus on casting for it or thinking about crew. And
mm,
so, that's when folks in the industry, yes, people are hungry, they sort of want it right away, but it takes time to bring projects to fruition. And so that's where you oftentimes, in life, have to have that balance, whether it's continuing work in other areas, because it takes time
yeah,
for things
absolutely,
to develop. It's not just, you know sit behind a desk and do paperwork.
right.
and,
No,
and
it's not.
again, this is not.
Right. And it's just also speaking to the point of, we have so many reboots and reimaginings, and
Sure.
projects that have licensing, and people
Yes,
own the license to it, so they
that's
want to
right.
bring it back.
That's right.
And that's what I guess that's what I mean by, they're not really focused on the outside when they have all of this IP that they have to work with. And so everybody has their own agenda, and everybody wants to move up in the chain, and what it is that they're going to do to move up move up in
Sure.
rank or in status, in this business. A lot of times, people are looking for what is going to be the next winner. And a lot of times they don't
Right.
really want to take that risk and go with an original concept. They want to go with what's safe and
That's
that
correct.
they know is going to make money in Hollywood. There's already an audience for it, things of that nature. So a lot of
Right.
times, um, like I said, you have to force your way into the business, and
Yes.
force that attention.
Yes, and be happy with where you are now. I'll say, I don't want to say that to say be complacent, but
Hmm.
what I'm saying is, again, it goes back to knowing what you're in it for, right?
Right.
For me as a producer, I love features. I love feature storytelling. I know that takes time to develop, and I'm in a place right now. If I could develop and release a feature every 3 years, I'm happy. I'm happy. Like, that to me is great because it takes time for these things to occur.
Yeah.
And, you know, and as we speak of reboots, being in the producer seat, I can see both sides, right?
Hmm.
Because the reality is it takes resources to make movies.
Yeah.
If you're creating or releasing projects and movies, and there's zero profitability, how can you sustain yourself as a producer? How can you sustain yourself in the industry? Because um, things have to be commercially viable. If
Yeah.
that's now, if you choose to make movies and you're not concerned about any level of profitability,
Right.
then that's different.
Hmm.
But and that said, too, it takes a lot of resources to make a movie, right? So, um, yes,
It's all good. All good. Now, speaking of making a movie, your most current film, which is The Exit Row,
yes,
and
yay.
that's on multiple streaming platforms right
That's
now.
correct.
If you could let us know what streaming platforms our audience can watch it on.
Yes. So the Exit Road can be watched on Peacock, Amazon, Tubi, so many more. It's on Vudu. There's honestly, I'm not even able to keep up with the ball, and you know what? That's a good thing
Right.
because there's so many streaming platforms out there. I mean, it's on Grio. It's in many places you could Google search, but top three that folks will likely immediately connect with are Peacock, Amazon, Tubi,
Mhm.
and so very happy about that, thrilled about that. And I think, this is where streaming revolution has really created more opportunities because it, it, it exists right now, right? The
Yes.
market exists. And I think we know when streaming first began, streaming was not profitable, right? It took some time, it has taken some time for the streaming models to figure out how to be
Monetize.
profitable.
Yes.
Um, and to be quite honest, every streamer that exists today, we know that not all streamers are gonna last forever because that's just how business works, right?
Right.
But right now, yes, there are prime opportunities because streamers are again building audiences, uh, creating catalogs, and choosing in many ways to license content that reflects their brand, right?
Yes.
Um, Netflix mentality when they wanted to be the number one streamer.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's been they're innovative,
Hmm.
and that's what you get. Um, so I think companies they have a vision, they have a mission, and they're, like as you mentioned, out to sort of fulfill that.
Hmm.
Um, Good, bad, or indifferent for some, but it goes back to what's your intent? What are you here for?
Yeah.
How do you what type of company or entity do you want to be?
Hmm.
And everybody gets to choose that for themselves, right? We're
Hmm.
not talking about taking advantage of people, but I would say to the actor, to the director, to the makeup artist, anybody out there in this industry or pursuing it, you get to decide how you want to play in this game, right?
Right. You do. You really do.
Yeah.
And being on the independent side of things, you have a lot more flexibility and leeway and freedom to
Yes.
be able to decide what it is, for one, who you are, what your company reflects, what type of
Right.
films and projects that you want to put out, and where you want them to be seen. Um, and you have the complete flexibility of, once you get it on X amount of platforms, to you might not be able to receive all of the data that these platforms receive, but
Right.
you can still get a bird's eye view of,
Sure.
okay, this is what my core audience likes.
Sure. Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
and then from there you can begin to tailor it, bring it down and tailor it to who your core audience is, and then begin to focus on fulfilling that void for your core audience.
Absolutely, absolutely. You're spot on. You're spot on. And I see these things as through social media. I can get a sense of these things, and you're right. That's market intel. You build on that, and then you may get to a point. I really want to tap this audience, so you try something new, right? So
Right.
And that's just being open. Um, it's all within reach. It's all
Yeah.
within reach. We all want to go higher every single day. You all want to go higher. And I would say to, folks who are watching, give yourself some grace, right? Give yourself permission to um, not be perfect every single time.
Right.
Because, and I'll say, May is Mental Health Awareness Month, right? And
Mhm.
so you want to make sure that first and foremost, you are the best that you can be. And doing that means you have to take care of yourself
Mhm.
physically, mentally, spiritually. I know for me as a producer, especially when I'm in production mode, things are happening so fast. We could be on the set all day and I'm still up till 2 a.m. Then I'm up at 6 or 7 a.m. Um, but within all that, you got to recognize, you got to take care of yourself.
Yes.
And so the time that I'm not on the set, kind of like right now, I've just come through this big writing phase and I'm now focusing on another area of writing. And
Okay.
I have the flexibility to do that at this stage. And it is very important because I want to make sure that when I show up for people, I'm locked in. I am 100% to the fullest extent possible.
Right.
And yeah, so I tell people and I when I started this, I said to myself, give myself permission not to um no, because no one's perfect, right?
Right. And you have to give. I get what you're trying to say. You have to give
Yes,
yourself permission to make mistakes. You have to give yourself permission to experiment.
yes,
You have to give yourself permission to be okay with whatever the outcome is
yes,
once you put your project out into the wild.
right,
It's not the
right,
end all be all. And at the end of the day, for one, you have something that you can put on your resume. You also have something that you have something to show.
right,
Um, it's something that you can utilize it, even if it's not your best project. You can utilize it as a tool, as to say, this is what I'm capable of at this
right.
moment in time. Um,
Yes,
and you can also utilize it to to monetize, to build up to a certain
absolutely.
point, to where
Absolutely.
once you have the budget to make it
That's
to
right.
where you want it to be.
That's right.
Now after your third, fourth, fifth film, you can
Yes.
now create the film that you always wanted to create from the beginning, but you
Right.
just might not have had the funds to do so.
That's right. Yep. And be proud of yourself along the way because not everybody can do this.
Yeah, yeah.
And it really does take something special. And I would say, I already have goals even for the next feature. There are things that I want to accomplish. So I'm always focused on leveling up, right?
Right.
And I'm super excited about it. But there are some very clear targets that I'm gunning for with this next feature. So,
Okay.
uh, yes.
Okay.
So
Well, before we get into the next feature, I know we kind of got off track a little bit about the exit row, but if you could, just for the audience, anybody who's interested in watching the exit row, if you could tell us what the exit row is about.
yes. So the exit row is a drama slash thriller. And so the exit row really starts with there's a chance encounter between two people on a traumatic flight, and it turns into a deadly obsession. So,
Right. Yeah.
yes. And I'll say when I wrote the exit row, uh, thinking about Bad to Rest Degree, which was the first feature, main character in Bad to Rest Degree, she had control over what was going on in her life.
Hmm.
And so all she had to do was choose which direction she wanted to go. And so that in part that became the catalyst for the exit row because I wanted to write about a main character who experiences something outside of her control. Something happens to her, and she has
Right.
to figure out her way. She has to figure her way out through it. And
Hmm.
so that became the impetus for developing the lead character, who's played by Anna Drew, the character Sasha Dade, and of course, then the story builds from there. So, uh, yeah. So the exit row, the whole point of the exit row was to have you on the edge of your seat.
Right.
So,
from
Go
start
watch
to
it.
finish.
That's right. If you haven't seen it, go watch it and get ready for what's next because there is more.
Okay, okay. Before we get into what's next, I do have a question. Like the
Yes.
flight scenes, um,
Yes.
where did you go to film those?
Yes. Now, we filmed at the Glen Martin Maryland Aviation Museum, which is in Middle River, right outside of Baltimore.
Oh wow,
So, the beauty of the exit row is that we literally filmed the very first scene of the movie on a real airplane.
wow,
And that was a tremendous gift. Making that happen, first and foremost, I have to thank, the airport because there was such a level of coordination that was really beyond what I was anticipating starting this movie. Um, I mean, they literally had volunteer staff or volunteers come together to support us for the filming of that particular day. We also had literally an on the spot dolly created for the camera because once we were on the airplane,
tight space. It's tight space.
the tight space. And so that was movie magic, right?
Right, right.
And I remember, and that said, all the planning coordination, and we were expecting to just be there for 4 or 5 hours, right? I was like, we can get this done, but it was a beautiful experience. They were so gracious, and I'm still in touch with them,
Mhm.
and just how that came together. Again, working through contact, someone reaching out was able to establish a connection, and they welcomed us there. So
Yeah,
grateful for it, and we made that happen. So those are the kinds of things that you cannot fully anticipate, because my initial thought was, all right, got to find a studio and do this simulation. So that was a huge big get for the exit row. And
yeah,
again,
yeah.
how often do folks have a chance to film an airplane scene on a real airplane?
Yeah, not often. A lot of times they're filmed on a studio. It's a makeshift airplane or airplane cabin,
That's
um,
right.
and it's cut in half, so you're only focused on one half
That's right.
of the flight,
Yes.
and then the rest is movie magic. And that way they can bring cameras in and move it all around however they want, whatever angle they want.
That's right.
Yeah, to do it on a real plane,
Yes.
that's it's a certain level of
That's
skill.
intense. That's right. And this is where we talk about, the level of professionalism required, just in some ways going with it. I remember when we were having that challenge with the camera and the eye, I thought, okay, this is a good time for me to walk away.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm going to let the director and the DP figure that out because I could potentially lose it right now.
yeah.
We're here. This doesn't work. But that's where, again, take a step back. And then I said to him, I know it's going to work. We're going to figure it out. They're going to figure it out. I'm going to just go and walk away.
Yeah. It lends to being creative and
That's right.
thinking, quickly on your feet and being able to figure out, okay, what angles work, what angles,
Yes.
how can we get the shot that we're looking for within this tight space,
That's
and
right. That's right.
you just end up making do with what you have, but thankfully you actually had an authentic plane to go off of. It's not something that's fake, and
That's
when you
right.
watch it, it looks fake. It's actually real.
Yes, and there's a lot of history behind that whole location. So I would tell, if you ever had a chance to have a chance to research or to go there, Glen Martin, Maryland Aviation Museum. There's so much history behind that. It's really phenomenal. So being able to tie those components into a movie are priceless as well, right? Because it's one thing to tell a fiction story, but to tap in what's real right here, um, whether it's in our immediate community or other parts of the country, it just creates these memorable experiences that you just cannot, you can't get away from, that
Right.
you never forget.
Right. Now, there's going to be a few questions that I'm about to ask that is not pocket watching, so to speak, but
Okay.
they're very important to
Sure.
the independent filmmaker, and
Yes.
also people who want to get into producing, whether it's line producing, executive producing, or just producing
Sure.
in general. Um, and that pertains to, how do you know what, I guess, in the beginning phases, after the script is done and
Hmm.
you begin to budget for this project, how do you know that you have the complete budget for one? And then for two, um, what are some of the steps that you take in order to
Sure,
finance a project,
sure,
especially if this is your first project?
sure. I would say, in terms of, it's very much okay to, first of all, check industry rates for cast and crew, right?
Yeah,
Check what those day rates are. You may not be making a movie that's SAG, that's union, but look and see what SAG pays an actor on a daily basis to see if you can meet that, right? Come up to that.
right.
So definitely check what those industry rates are, and especially for cast and crew. If you know that you're going to have different locations in your movie, filming in your area, go find out what it costs to either rent that location. Do you know someone who owns a location similar to where you want to film?
Mhm.
Are they willing to let you use that space for a set price, an hourly rate? They may even let you film there for free because a lot of people love filmmaking, right? It's
Yeah,
exciting. So
it
you'll
is.
find people who are willing to open their doors and let you come in to use their space. There's opportunities for product marketing. I remember when I filmed Bachelorette Degree, there was a restaurant I was curious about. I'm like, I want to film here. And so I went there, and the owner, being an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
He believed in what I was doing. He'd taken that entrepreneurial path. So he understood that.
Mhm.
And he said to me, he's like, he asked me to prepare my proposal and come back. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I do not have time to like prepare a full written proposal. And
Mhm.
so I thought about it for a moment. So, okay. So my day to go back and meet with him, I thought, I'm my proposal, right? I'm just going to sit down and I'm going to explain what it is I'm trying to do. And I'm speaking from the heart. And
Right.
that's all it took. That's all it took. So, things like that. And when you look at your script, you got to think about, well, what's going on in the story? Do you have something blowing up? Can you realistically pull that off?
Right.
um,
Yes.
if you're going to use special effects, can you afford that in post production? So there's a degree of see it big, which I tend to see it big, but then think about, okay, if I can't do it at this level, how am I going to maybe bring it down a notch from a
Right.
production standpoint and to make it feasible? And
Right.
there is a level of thinking about your film realistically, because if you want to create a sci-fi movie and you have zero access to the moon, um,
It's not
you
going to
know,
work.
it,
You have to write to your means, and you have to craft the story, especially early on. You have to craft the story to where it's something that you know that you can accomplish. And if it's not something that you can accomplish, if you still have that story, it's okay to write it, but that might be a story that you tackle later.
could
But
be, yep, could be a story you tackle later. And
yeah.
then when it comes to, you asked about sort of financing.
Mhm.
Okay, and here's where, as a producer, as an executive producer, I 100% believe in, you have to be able to invest in yourself, right? So if you're not willing to put your own finances into it, you cannot expect that someone else will.
Right.
It's not saying you have to be, have $5 million to make a movie, or you have to borrow $5 million, or go out to secure that level of money for your first film, or whatever.
Mhm.
But of yourself, you have to be the first one bought in, because how can you expect anybody else to buy into you if you're not doing it for yourself?
Right.
Um, you know, I've literally, I've had filming in my home. um, I've literally taken, at times, clothes out of my closet that are being featured in the movie, whether it's my vehicle, just my own resources, um, contributing to a movie. So again, this is where whatever it takes.
Yeah. Absolutely.
um, and again, there are going to, you may have friends, you may have family who want to contribute financially. They could do that. They may provide space. They may know someone. who knows someone who owns the location that
Yeah.
you want to film in.
Yeah.
So it's working those channels. Now I have to admit, as a producer, my eye is always open. I'm always scouting because it's so much fun. I love seeing beautiful locations. I'm
Right.
like, okay, I'm gonna check this place out, And so come back to and just ask.
Mm.
Sometimes you just have to go knock on the door and ask. Maybe it's a phone call, write a letter.
Yeah.
In the exit row, we literally filmed at a real police station.
Yeah. And
And
they being that it's already a service driven field, and I'm sure that they were probably honored that you wanted to use their police station.
they were excited,
Yeah.
right? Part of it, using this is where community comes in, right?
Right.
This is my community.
Hmm.
And so seeing it from that perspective, filmmaking allows me to connect even further with my community.
Right.
So not only were they excited about it because, whoa, someone is making a real movie here,
Yeah.
you know, I'm in this community. And again, the level of coordination and them being willing to be available. And then I had to even admit that the day we were supposed to film there, there was a scheduling conflict on their end.
Hmm.
Again, quick thinking, you know, the gentleman didn't think it could work, but I knew it could work. I just asked for the next day and it worked, right? Because he thought we'd have to do this long lead time. I was like, well, how about tomorrow? Instead,
Right.
the next day.
Right.
And it totally worked. And so this is where, as a producer, you got to have a cool head, right? You can't just
Yes.
fly off the handle. You just have to be able to think quickly, figure it out.
Hmm.
Um, and ultimately, shifting to that next day worked so much better for the overall production. So it always works out.
Yeah.
You just stay with it. Just stay with it.
You absolutely have to have a certain degree of patience in this field and in this process because to your point, there's going to be a lot of
Yes,
things that come up, a lot of
that's right.
unexpected, um, and you have to learn how to navigate the unexpected
Yes,
and be okay
that's right.
within the unexpected,
That's right.
and just pivot.
Just pivot.
Yeah, just pivot and
Yeah,
make do with what you have and what time constraint or what location and the amount of space that they give you and the
that's
amount of
right.
time that they give you, things of that nature.
Yes, yes. And be willing to get something in return, right? As I
Yeah,
mentioned, the restaurant where we'd filmed, I worked to the script. Okay, we're going to say the name of your restaurant. So
yeah.
all those things, it works both ways. And so,
I was gonna say it
yeah,
that is an important. I feel like that's a key point in your pitch when if you are a producer or a filmmaker and you are
that's right.
looking to shoot in a location, an important part of your pitch when approaching whoever it is
That's right.
should be this could be an opportunity for
That's right.
us to provide more
That's right.
exposure for you, and you
Yep.
can use certain aspects of this as
That's right.
marketing.
Yep. And
And
that's
whether
all. Yeah, that's all it took. And I can tell you that particular location, they did not charge us a dime to film there.
yeah.
And they were so gracious. We even ended up, that was an all nighter we'd filmed for Bachelorette's degree. And midnight, this owner owns two restaurants. They went to the other restaurant, made fresh pizzas, brought it back to the location for
Wow.
our food.
Wow.
And again, I'm saying they did not ask for a dime out of production budget. This is community working together. Um,
Mhm.
it, that's it. I mean,
That's what you have to do sometimes. And kudos to those who, those establishments who are that way and do open their doors
sure.
to us creatives because it does allow it. For one, it allows for the community to come together on
Yes,
a project and a cause if there's a cause attached to it as well. And then for two, it's also a new way for them to potentially bring in new
that's
business,
right. That's right.
whether
That's right.
whether you guys come back as customers
That's
or
right.
even everybody who watches once they see the name, like where's that at
Yeah,
in
that's
in
right.
Maryland or in
That's
Virginia
right.
or wherever the
Yes.
case.
Yes, because there's a certain yes.
Yeah, I need to go
Well, there's a
visit that
Thai
restaurant.
yes, because there's a Thai food restaurant where we filmed a scene for the exit row, and I'm a regular.
Oh, see, there you
I
go.
mean, they
Yeah.
can't get rid of me now. I'm like, hi, it's me again.
Right, and then every time they see you, I'm sure it's going to be a talking point, like,
That's
"How you
right.
doing?
That's
When's the
right.
next movie coming?" And,
That's right. Yeah,
yes.
it's awesome. It's just great all the way around, just as we've said. And then, of course, there are those establishments like, you want to make a movie here? No way. What are you talking about? A movie? Are you crazy? Because I've had people say that to me. Like, okay, and you just let it go.
Yeah. I think those in those cases, those folks are either afraid,
Yes.
or they're maybe thinking about liabilities, or
Yes.
that it'll, force their customers to
Sure.
not,
Sure.
shy away or not wanna be a part,
Sure.
but I feel like it actually draws more people in when they see, "Oh, what's going on in here?"
It does, and as you mentioned, having to be respectful of what their concerns are, just let it go. Because I'll be honest, when I'm with cast and crew in these locations, oh, I'm thinking about liabilities, right? I don't want anything to be broken. Please, when I see crew standing on this chair, I'm like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Okay, okay, we can't
Right,
tear up this restaurant. Let me deflect and just keep talking to the owner so that they don't see that they're standing in a booth over there. So
yeah, yeah.
I'm
Safety
yes,
first.
that's
Safety
right,
first.
safety first.
Alright, so now, with your next project, because I'm assuming that you are constantly writing. I'm pretty sure it's been about a good 2 to 3 years since the exit row. Um, so now I'm sure you're gearing up for the next big project. And I know you probably want to keep certain things under wraps. So whatever you want to share with us, feel free to share with us.
Sure. So, do you want to do the drum roll? You want me to do it? All right. So, there's going to be a sequel to the exit row.
All
And
right.
yes, yes. You may have seen me mention it in a previous Instagram post, but from a media perspective, you are getting the exclusive. There is going to be a sequel to the exit row. It has been written, and I'm super excited about it.
I'm
And
sure.
yes. And again, as you heard me mention, I challenge myself. And so with this story, the story evolves, it has evolved. So it is not going to be the same as what folks saw in the first one.
Hmm.
This sequel can actually stand alone, but of course, it pulls from the first one. I'm excited about it for so many reasons. One, going to introduce them. You're going to see some characters you saw before, introducing some new characters, and just the storyline. It goes deeper. It goes even deeper. And so, where I challenged myself in part was again where I'm taking this story, where I've taken this story, and some of the new characters who will enter it. And ooh,
Yeah, I know you can't wait.
she's
I
good.
can't wait. Now,
Yes.
have you guys began filming? Has filming
Have
started?
not started production. So will not start production in 2024.
Okay.
But I will say uh, 2025 is looking good.
I
So
can imagine. Yeah.
yes, but I'm super excited about it, and yeah, yeah,
So right now you're in the pre-production phase. You're gearing everything up. You're figuring all of the things out.
that's
Um,
right,
as it pertains to budget,
that's right,
locations,
that's right,
casting. Even though you have some of the cast is coming back, they're returning, but I'm sure you're going to be casting some new faces as well.
that's
So
correct,
you have to go through that process and figure
that's
that
right,
out, see who's available,
that's
and
right.
um,
And I have some things blowing up in the script, right? So I got to figure out, can I make this happen?
oh, okay,
Oh yeah, we're going there.
okay.
I
So
see it big. I see it big, and so if I
pure
can,
pure action suspense thriller. Is that
there's
what this is?
action. I'm likely gonna have to tap into some real stunt folks because
Yeah.
we have some stuff happening here. But
Okay.
yeah. So
Yeah, that's a particular topic that has come up recently is that there's not a whole lot of black action films. When at the end of the day, probably the most recent ones I can think of are like action comedy, which involve like Kevin Hart, The Rock. Um,
Right. Right.
maybe we can consider Fast and the Furious, because of the diverse cast. But a lot of times we don't really have too many action films out there. So that is a lane that's wide open, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yes. And I won't classify the Exit sequel as a full action film, but there are
right,
some,
there's some
but
action
but
element.
there's some definitely some action elements in there. You know, because we're taking it up a notch even further, and so um, yeah. So again, I'm excited about it. You know, obviously I'm thinking safety first, right? Like this is what I want to do. And so I'm a big fan of, if it's written, if I have the vision for it, technically everything can happen. You just got to make sure, can you make it happen at the level you want it to have the maximum impact, being safe, working within your budget.
Mhm.
Because the goal is to tell the story. You want to tell the story the most effective way possible. And I don't want to cheat the story. I don't want to just say Johnny did this. We're going to see what Johnny's
Show
doing,
it,
right? It's
right.
show, don't tell. You got to show, don't tell. And I want to show everything I've written.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely,
yes,
absolutely. You have to let me know when you guys begin production.
absolutely, I will.
I would love to come on set one day,
Yes,
be a fly on the wall.
yes,
You know, maybe capture a little bit of behind the scenes, or kind of show what it's like, uh,
sure,
a day in the life on set of an independent feature film. Uh,
absolutely.
I would love to showcase that. And
Yes,
I live in Virginia as well.
that's right. And I
So
think you have a bit of an acting background too, huh, Kevin?
Uh, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that.
Okay,
I
okay,
can do it.
okay,
I got. I'm more on the writing. I'm more on the writing.
okay,
I would.
okay,
I would love to play around in that space, but I
okay,
can't. I can't sit here and say that I'm an actor of, or that
okay,
I've done anything
okay.
for real as it pertains to acting.
Right,
I haven't.
right,
Um,
right.
but yeah, I'm more in the writing space. How I got into this was, I'm an aspiring screenwriter as well,
Okay,
and just through the process of
sure,
looking
sure.
for scripts and whatnot, I was looking for scripts written by people of color,
Yes.
couldn't find them, and I, I started to discover that there was no site dedicated to
Okay.
what it is that we do, and that's how I ended up,
Right. Right.
forming the Black Script.
Yes. And
Um,
I think as you continue on this journey, as you mentioned, being a writer, part of it too, we're in the DMV area.
mhm.
It's not New York. We're not Atlanta. Yeah.
Oh,
Not
but
LA. But
you don't have to be.
you don't have to, absolutely. And I will tell you, I have seen such a burgeoning influx of filmmaking in this area. When we filmed Bachelorette's Degree and when that was released premiere, there was nowhere near the level of activity of filmmaking that's happening in this area right now. And so when we were producing the exit row and everything you're seeing, I'm like, this is exciting because
Yeah,
just like you, I've wanted it to see it here, but things have really blown up here.
they really
I
have.
mean,
They really have. And this the DMV area, the whole DMV area, DC, Maryland, Virginia, we truly are a hub for talent.
yes,
Actors, writers, filmmakers, um, and even people behind the scenes as well.
yes,
We
yes,
are truly a hub for talent. And I think as time goes on, more and more people are
yes,
starting to discover that.
yes,
Oftentimes, in TV and film, Hollywood or whoever would come to DC, film the shots that they need to
that's
film,
right,
and then get out of Dodge. Whereas to now,
right,
we are building our own production agencies, production companies,
right,
and creating here on our home front and being
right,
able to showcase the DMV area the way it really should be presented, and also providing jobs and
yes,
opportunity for
yes,
our folks
yes,
who actually live here, and
that's right,
not flying somebody in and then flying them out.
right. Right. And
So
yep, everything you said is so on point. And I will say the one, yes, so much talent here. And I always say this as a producer, it's like, wow, if people really knew how much talent was here,
yeah,
so it's just amazing. And I will say the one thing that I feel like we do lack in the area right now, we don't have a lot of studios, right? We don't have necessarily a lot of filming studios. We do primarily rely on going on location. Now, I love filming on location, but
Yeah.
there are those times where you're like, man, I wish I was just in a studio where I could control this environment a bit more.
Yeah.
So we do kind of lack in terms of the availability of studios where you can actually go in and film. I mean, there are some public access TV stations that I've accessed in the past.
Mhm.
And that said, having filming studios, you got to have budget for that as well, right?
You do. You really
You
do.
have, you
Yeah.
have to have enough filming activity in the area to make those studios viable to exist here.
Yeah.
So again, it all works together.
Hmm.
But what I do love about this area, the DMV is so beautiful. You can capture so many different looks and scenery. And every time I'm out filming, I discover so much more about the area that
Yeah.
I didn't know or places I hadn't seen. And so it's just amazing to be able to highlight that in your movies.
Yes, we are able to shed a different light
Yes,
than those who are not from the DMV area, and come to this area to film and then leave because they're only going to focus on
that's right.
the key locations. They're not going to go out and scout for something different because they want something that looks in their eyes authentic
Yes,
to DC or authentic to Maryland or Virginia without realizing that if maybe from the people who are outside of Maryland, Virginia, and DC, when we watch a show and they say Langley or wherever the case may be, and I'm like, that's not Langley, that's not
right.
that area. That looks like somewhere in California somewhere or whatever.
Yeah, yes,
You can tell, but us here, we can actually shed light as to what actually goes on here in the different locations and the richness in the culture
yes,
and
yes.
the vibrance and the melting pot of people and the diversity, all of that. We can share all of that, and
Absolutely.
that part is
Absolutely.
missing, I think.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. So okay, so I really enjoyed this conversation, and
Likewise.
as we said in the beginning, we could talk all
We
night.
can talk all night long. Yes.
This is probably going to be one of my longest interviews. That's okay because this was really more so of
Sure,
a
sure.
conversation than it was an interview.
Yes.
I hope I was able to ask a lot of the key points about what it
Oh,
is that you do and
sure.
everything that you have coming up as well. Um, but one last thing is that I like to have all of my guests give a final word, whether that's a piece of advice, words of encouragement,
Hmm.
or a quote that you like to live by. You can
Sure.
say all three, or you can choose one of the three. It's up to you.
I will, let me try to tackle all three.
Okay.
In terms of piece of advice, I would say once you recognize your gift, go for it, use it. The
Right.
world needs it. And that's why it's a gift because don't hide. Sometimes I know it can be scary at first. You may be unsure, but once you're in it, once you tap into it, just go for it. Just go for it. Um, in terms of favorite quote, and
Hmm.
actually, my favorite quote actually is a Denzel Washington quote,
Okay.
and
I
he
think I know
says,
this
"Yes,
one.
uh, man gives the awards, but God gives the reward."
Yes. Amen. Amen on that.
And yes, and so your last, there was another question there.
Words of encouragement.
Words of encouragement. I think I might have tackled it in the first one, but I
Yeah.
would say um, keep doing what you're doing. Do it with pure intention, right?
Right.
And just keep going for it because it is a journey. And as the person I interned under told me, the film industry is not going anywhere. So if it takes you another year, another 2 years, another 3 years, 5 years, on that journey, you're going to be experiencing life, learning things that are all going to feed into what you're going to do ultimately. So
Mhm.
keep living, keep absorbing, and just keep going.
Yeah. Well, on that note, Vanetta Cornish, everybody.
Well, thank you, Kevin, for having me. And I'm sure we'll do it again. And I appreciate the time.